Hi, welcome to Triggered Care. I am Alex. Today I'm going to be doing part 2 of my childhood heroes. This was originally going to be one video, but after seeing how long it was going to take, I decided to split it up into 2 videos. So this is part 2, Teacher Edition. This is talking about the teachers who made a very positive impact on my life while growing up. So, let's get into it. The first teacher I'm going to speak about today was my kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Turner. She was a very sweet lady, and the one story that sticks out from me, since I mentioned before, my memories from kindergarten to first grade are very sparse and not a lot is there. I don't have many memories. But there is one day in particular of kindergarten that I remember very well because it elicited some emotions that touched me very deeply. Okay, so let's get into it. On this particular kindergartner day of kindergarten class, we were learning about Native Americans. And it was Indian Day or something like that. You have to remember, this is back in the 90s. So it probably wasn't PC, but she was a very nice teacher. We learned about Indian corn and the Native Americans and hunting and buffalo and all of those sorts of things. With different activities, making bracelets, necklaces, whatever. And throughout the day, every child had this paper headband that went on their head. And when they did good at an activity, or when they were listening really well to the teacher, they'd get a feather stapled onto their headband. And it was a great, fun day full of activities, and Mrs. Turner worked it out so every child had 3 feathers on their headband by the time that school was almost out. And it was getting to the last, 10 minutes, 20 minutes of class. And Mrs. Turner's trying to get the children to calm down in class because everybody's really excited. It was sort of a different sort of day, not your regular routine. So obviously a bunch of 5 and 6-year-olds are going to be a little bit hyped up and overstimulated and not able to listen very well. Well, the first time Mrs. Turner said, "All right, class, settle down," I sat down and I stared at her because I obey adults. I just do. The consequences I grew up with, you could not disobey an order like that. And Mrs. Turner was the sweetest lady. It's not like she said it mean. It's not like she said it in any way. She was saying it like a normal teacher would of, "All right, class, everybody settle down." And so I sat and I gave her my eyes, my eye attention. And the other kids were not paying attention. And I could feel, as a child, Mrs. Turner's patience, of like, okay, you guys gotta listen. So she says it again. "All right, everybody, you need to settle down now and get to your desks." Again, nobody's listening. They're just talking over each other. And I'm continuing to look at her like I don't know what to do. I promise I'm listening, right? And the third time she says it, she raises her voice. And that gets the kids' attention because this teacher never raises her voice. So she raises her voice a little bit like, "We need to get to our seats now." And then all the kids are sitting quietly and all sort of looking at each other scared because, oh my goodness, Mrs. Turner, the nicest teacher in the world, actually raised her voice. And she starts telling the kids, when I say something, I expect you to listen. It's okay to have fun, but it's also very important to listen. And while she's saying this, she's going over to her desk and she's grabbing another feather like a paper feather. And then she continues, there was one child in here who listened, and she's going to get another feather. And she walked straight over to me, and I was floored. It still makes me choke up, which makes me feel crazy, but just the fact that she pointed me out in a positive way, you know, and also gave me one more than everybody in the whole class. Just that my tiny little body of a product of neglect and abuse could not take that happiness and that good feeling that she provided of, I'm a good person and I listen, because I was always yelled at that I didn't listen, you know, and that I was stupid. But it was like the first adult who really responded to me in a way that I really loved, and I really liked that. It really touched me in a way. It was almost like an intense form of intimacy that it really shouldn't be that intense of intimacy that I have with that, but it was just so overwhelming, the love that I felt in my heart of, oh my God, she sees me and she likes me. Okay, I'm going to try to stop crying, and I will be right back with my next teacher story. Okay, for this next one, we're going to skip a lot of years. Not because I didn't have good teachers through my younger days, but I'm sticking to teachers who really helped me with my PTSD in a way, and who really left a mark on my heart. Not that my other teachers didn't do that, but I'm not going to go through teacher K through 12 with you. The next teacher I'm going to talk about was my high school biology teacher, and also I was a teacher's aide for him for a year as well. He... I'll call him G-Tron, because that's what I called him back then. But G-Tron, Mr. G-Tron, high school biology teacher, science teacher, he was very special to me because he provided a listening ear along with a space for me to cry. He provided... I'm going to cry about all my teachers, because the ones who touched me in such a way, it's like I put some of my parent love on them, and it makes me cry partly because I don't see them anymore and I don't talk to them anymore, and it makes me cry because, you know, teachers are amazing. Teachers really are amazing. Anyway, so this guy, he provided a safe place for me. He had a couch in his classroom that, I mean, I could just go in there and flop on the couch with him in the middle of class, and he would be like, okay, Alex, what's going on? Let me help you out. You can sit back here. Let me, you know, write a note for your next class, sort of deal. A time that pops into my head where he kind of showed his empathy for me and his understanding for me. It was actually a time that I got in trouble, or I should have gotten into a lot more trouble than what I did. We were in his biology class, and I'm going to refer you to the Hickey story time, because this is in that time frame. Well, pretty much that day almost. So later that day I was going to be talked to by a police officer and all that. But earlier in the day I was in biology class with G-Tron, and we were doing some class activity, you know, where you pair up with people and you're working on a worksheet or whatever. And I have hickeys on my neck from my boyfriend. And there is a guy in that class. He's one of my girlfriend's boyfriends. And so I don't know him that well. We're not really friends, me and him. I just know him, and he's like in my friend circle. And he starts teasing me about the hickeys. Because, I had my hair down. I was trying to hide it. And he noticed it, and he started pointing it out to the rest of the class. And I asked him to stop it, or I'm like, haha, very funny. Can you stop now? And he would not stop teasing me about these hickeys. And I was in a emotional way already from all that had already transpired from my life, and from fighting with mother, and from tooth surgery, and from all these things. And he keeps poking fun at my hickeys and poking fun at me. I'm that type of girl. I'm that type of girl. And part of it is probably that my mom used to call me a whore and stuff like that. So he was triggering, and he wasn't. I don't fault this guy at all. I don't consider this guy a bully at all. This guy on a normal day, very nice guy, but you're a teenager, right? You're gonna give people shit sometimes, and he was giving me shit, and usually I can take some shit, but that particular day and the sort of shit he was giving me, I could not handle that. And I ended up slapping him across the face in the middle of class. I stood up and I walked over to him, and I just full force slapped him across the face. And I am not proud of this. I do not suggest this. I think this was probably partly a PTSD reaction as well. Not that that excuses it. PTSD doesn't excuse violent behavior. But anyway, so I slap him across the face, and G-Tron sees this. And I've known G-Tron for a while by this point, and I get along with G-Tron very much so. We have talked about my family stuff a bit. We have talked about other things a bit. I talked to him about my boy troubles. He was sort of like a surrogate dad to me. So G-Tron sees me slap this boy across the face, and he calls both of us over like, whoa, what's going on? And, the boy gives his statement of things, and then he asks me what's going on. I'm close to tears. I'm very triggered. I'm very upset, and I can't really pinpoint why I'm upset, except for, he was teasing me, and that's not an appropriate reaction to teasing, but I don't know why, but, it was just too intense. And, I don't even remember the explanation I gave. Probably just, he kept making fun of my neck or whatever, And I'm trying to not cry because I hate crying in front of people. But G-Tron, he's a smart man. And he can see what's going on. And so he goes to the boy, you go sit over there and you don't talk to her. You don't need to say anything to her. And she will keep her hands to herself. And then he's like, he comforted me. He told me that I was going to be okay. And in those moments when you have shit parents, but these teachers show you empathy and compassion and understanding, they really make a difference. And they really stick in your mind. I will always love that teacher. I will always cry through teacher videos. Just warning you. So, I will leave that teacher alone I'll throw in this blurb. When I was his teacher aide, he had us collecting materials for different classes and stuff, and then he also, I remember one time we had a Lord of the Rings day where we just watched Lord of the Rings on his couch. Or I think it was the Lord of the Rings week, because it was block scheduling, so it was a 90-minute block, but still wasn't long enough for a Lord of the Rings entire movie. He's just amazing. G-Tron, if you ever get to listen to this, know that you are awesome. I think this is the hardest video of getting through without crying. That's silly, because I've talked about some really sad stuff on here, but it's almost like I've processed that stuff more, so it doesn't make me weep every time I talk about it. So, for my last teacher hero that I'm going to talk about today, also another high school teacher. I'll call him Mr. H. Mr. H was my creative writing teacher along with AP composition and literature teacher. He had really nice conversations with me. Like, we talked about our lives a lot. He had life trouble, I had life trouble, and there was kind of a familiar pain between the two of us that really made us get along very well. He was goofy and he was funny. He very much enjoyed. I love reading and I love writing, so he always really liked my own work that I would turn in for the class, and he also just enjoyed talking with me, and I enjoyed talking with him immensely. There were times where I would be almost tardy for class, especially when my mother was still driving me to school because she didn't care if I was late, and so I'd be like running and sprinting in order to get there in time before the bell, because I hated tardies. I absolutely hated them. I could not stand them on my conscience. So if, say, there was a day that I was running late, if I ran into Mr. H in the hall, I'd be like, "Hey, Mr. H, want to take me to class?" And he'd be like, "Yes." And then he'd walk with me to my first class and be like, "Oh, she was with me this morning, sorry." He was just a super nice dude. He helped me out of a few tardies, which I'm very grateful for because I hate tardies. But the story that comes to mind with Mr. H the most is this one. So I was in Mr. H's class, last class, block scheduling, 90-minute class, right? Well, halfway through the class, there was an assembly for the school downstairs because the English department was on the second story. So we go to the assembly, and it gets done about 20 minutes before the bell rings, so then we're sent back to class, but then Mr. H, being the laid-back teacher that he is like, "Alright, you guys, take your backpacks, get on out of here, you don't need to sit here, I don't have anything for you." So we're like, cool, we get to get out early, which other teachers were sort of doing that too, since the assembly had happened and it hadn't left much time, other than if, you can stay and work on homework if you want to. That sort of deal. So I went to wait outside of my boyfriend at the time. I was waiting outside of his classroom, which was by the science department, which was down the hall from the English department, still in the second story. And I'm standing by the stairwell, sort of, outside of his classroom. And this is before the bell rings. This is like 5 minutes before the bell rings. And my phone starts vibrating, and I look to see, and it's my mother calling during school. Now, she didn't know that I was let out early. She's just trying to get a hold of me before the bell rings. But I'm like, "Hey, today I can answer this call." So I answer, and I'm talking to her, like, "Oh, yeah, we were just in an assembly, blah, 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 doing this, this, and this." And I'm talking to her about after-school plans or whatever was going on. And then Mrs. Okay, I have to be honest. I don't actually remember her real name, and I don't know if this could be her real name. And I don't know if it is her real name. I think it might be a mean nickname. And I don't want to make fun of this woman now, because I'm an adult. I'm not a teenager saying mean names. But Mrs. Ratman finds me on the phone. And Mrs. Ratman has a reputation for being overly strict and overly controlling of the students. So she catches me on the phone, and the rules of the school are you can't have your cell phone out during the day. It can be in your backpack or your locker, but you cannot have it out. You cannot be using it. It shouldn't be turned on. So she comes up to me while I'm on the phone with my mother, and she's looking at me, and I can tell that she's angry and wants to get me in trouble. So I tell Ma, oh God, I have to go. I'm getting in trouble. I'll be back later. And she laughs at me. She's like, aha, okay. And so I hang up the phone, and I hand her the phone because she's holding out her hand like, give me that phone. So I gave her the phone, and she's asking me who my teacher is for that hour. I go, oh, it's Mr. H. And so she walks me to Mr. H's classroom, pretty much threatening me with Alec, which was the punishment. I can't remember if it was in-school suspension or after-school detention, some sort of punishment, which I was terrified of because I can't say I never got punished in school, but I was terrified of punishment in general. I did have a suspension one time, and I was very sad about that. But I was terrified. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to get in trouble for talking to my mom on the phone when my teacher let me out early. Like, this is just a huge mess. And so she walks me to Mr. H's classroom. And he's just standing there. He's looking at papers or whatever. And he looks kind of surprised to see me, and also he was probably a little embarrassed that she came to be like, look at this naughty student, then seeing that there are no students left in his classroom because he let them all go. But she brought me over to him, and she was telling him, I found this young lady on her cell phone, and she's going to need a punishment, and la da 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 da. And he keeps a straight face. And he's like, I understand. Okay. And then she gives him my phone for him to take care of it. And like, she's haughty-taughty, leaves the room. And as soon as she's out of the room and down the hall, he just gives me my phone back. And it's like, that's ridiculous. And my relief from not getting into trouble, because I was convinced by this point that I was going to get in trouble, and my relief of course Mr. H isn't going to get you in trouble. He's understanding, he's empathetic, he's a laid back dude. But that overwhelmed me with the love feeling, and I jumped on him and I gave him a hug. I gave him a huge, like, bear hug, and he was very polite. But he did not hug me back. He's like, I'm sorry, Alex, but legally, I can't touch you, and I don't want this to be inappropriate. Like, he had very strict, which all teachers do. He was being a good teacher and like, hey, dude, I can't really give you a hug, but thank you. And I just really appreciated him, and I really because it's like those teachers that you meet like that, they're just so down to earth, and they're so relatable, and it's so nice to know that there's adults that you can empathize with when you come from a crazy world of untrustworthy adults and stuff like that. So, these have been my teacher hero tales for now. At least the 3 big ones that I can think of. I'm sorry for all the crying. I really didn't think I'd cry through this video, but I should have figured better because I don't talk about these stories all that much. So it's, whenever I do bring them up, they're still a bit tender. But links for everything is down below. Email me your story, write me your story if you want to. Feel free to subscribe, to put your thoughts and experiences. And as always, have a good one.